You probably never thought a man caught by his wife's betrayal would act the way you expect. Not only did he catch his wife cheating, but he also crafted a perfect plan for revenge that 90% of men would never dare to carry out. Unlike typical stories, he didn't just go for divorce, he plotted a secret strategy for payback. So, what happened when he confronted his unfaithful wife? Her reaction made everything even more mysterious. You won't be able to look away from this story. Before continuing the story, tell me which city you are watching from. I want to know how far this video has come. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so I can send you exciting stories like this every day. Is adultery considered a capital offense? My reasonable brain knows it isn't. However, if I had my pistol with me when I watched my wife and her lover enter the hotel room, it very well may have happened. Thankfully, by the time I arrived in my truck, I had calmed myself and simply looked at the center console where I kept it. I occasionally receive huge quantities of money for my work, and I carry a .357 in the truck just in case. I've only ever fired it at the range, but I enjoy weapons and have the right to own them, so why not? I called my supervisor to tell him the story. I'd be taking the rest of the day off and possibly tomorrow. I needed to hire a lawyer and devise a strategy. I withdrew $3,000 from our account and started a new one in my name exclusively, leaving $5,000 in there to cover this month's rent and bills. We just had one credit card for emergencies, so I called to cancel it. We had switched our minimum payment from month to month, so there was no house to worry about, no children either. I wasn't going to forgive her, especially now that I knew it was the fourth or fifth time. At the very least, this was the fourth time she had charged a hotel to her credit card. I looked up the account online and saw the charges, then noticed where she had moved money from her bank account to cover it. As long as the card had no outstanding balance at the conclusion of the billing cycle, we would not receive a hard copy statement. The account emails were delivered to her, so if I hadn't taken the time to check, I would not have known. It's strange, if my debit card hadn't stopped working yesterday due to a malfunction, I would never have checked our balance. I would never have noticed the credit card payment. If I hadn't seen the credit card payment, I wouldn't have looked into the charges yesterday. If I hadn't checked the cost, I wouldn't have realized I was at the hotel today. If I hadn't been at the hotel today, I wouldn't be getting divorced from my adulterous wife. I know I should have said something last night, but my mind was still processing the thought that she could be leaving now. I had proof. Therefore, it was time to take action. I looked online and found a lawyer who said they specialized in divorces. I told him the story and was pleasantly surprised. We had just been married for 4 years, so I could probably get by with little spousal support. She had been working at a well-paying job for 6 months, which is why we signed a month-to-month lease. We wanted to buy a home. At least I believed we did. Who knew what was going on in her mind anymore? After that, I went home and drank a beer. Then it finally hit me. I adore the dumb bitch. Why would she do this to me? What did I do wrong? I recognized that if I sat around, I would only wallow in self-pity. So I took some tape and began strolling through the house, taping everything I desired. Basically, my gaming consoles, television, and fitness equipment. Aside from that, everything was linked to a memory we shared, and it was simply too painful. As I wandered around, I began to think of clever ways to get back at them. When I got to leaving, her stuck in a snowbound cottage with no food or clothes, and breaking his legs in the wilderness so scavengers could find him, I realized I was overreacting, especially when I added the possibility of giving him a rifle with only one bullet in it and it being ineffective. So when he gathered up the guts to shoot himself, he heard a click. Yes, I went there. Then I discovered that things do not always turn out as well as they do in the stories, so I was better off divorcing the bitch and moving on. I was sad because I assumed Samantha would be. The woman would grow older and have children. Everything seemed to come flooding back. My proposal took place at the theater, where we first met on a blind date. The 3-day weekend at Myrtle Beach, sitting with her while her father was dying of cancer. The lengthy discussion over the decision to relocate away from our friends so that I might take this job. Our wedding night, and her proud expression when she deep-throated me for the first time. How we cuddled and had a sex marathon throughout those 2 days. Power went out during a winter storm. All of those memories were now layered with the vision of her laughing and holding some shithead's hand while they kissed, then opening a hotel room door. My reverie was interrupted by the sound of the door opening. "Alex, what are you doing at home?" she inquired as she ran up to hug me. I placed the sofa between us and simply stared at her. There was no evidence that she had been screwing someone else today, which wasn't surprising. "Cut the stuff, Quinn. I know you've been banging one of your co-workers, so I'd recommend you start going through and tagging what you want. You will be served with divorce papers on Wednesday." Her reaction was unexpected. She almost appeared relieved. "I'm extremely sorry, Alex. I should not have gone behind your back." "You deserve the truth," she added calmly. "Sorry you cheated or were caught," I asked coldly. "I apologize for not telling you I was upset. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to get a divorce. A few months back, I decided I wanted out." "You deserved so much more from me," she continued, her eyes welling up with tears. "You've been screwing him for several months." I couldn't help it. My voice became louder. I was so angry and upset. "No, we've only connected 5 times in the last few weeks," she exhaled. "But I've wanted out of this marriage for the past 6 months." "What? Why?" I asked. My world appeared to have shifted 5 degrees off center. "Because I am 25 years old and do not want to have to return home at 10 p.m. if I am having a good time with my pals. I don't want to worry about drinking too much and potentially insulting your boss at a Christmas party. If I see a pair of shoes that I don't need or cannot afford, I want to be able to buy them without feeling like I'm depleting our future children's college savings." She answered with some fire. "So you decide you'd like to cease being an adult? Do you want to return to your carefree early 20s? Okay, you got it. I took half our savings. I'm going to remove my name from the lease tomorrow." I pulled out an extra $1.75 to pay for the STD test. Please comment number 1 so that I can know that you liked the video and subscribe to our channel. Your support is a great inspiration and encouragement for us. Thank you very much. We screwed up last Sunday, and I'm sure you've been with him before, so I can't expect you to care enough about me to have him use a condom. You want your freedom? You've got it. Enjoy life with your new pals and career. Despite my best efforts to remain calm, I couldn't stop myself from raising my voice in fury. "Yes, Alex, when we married, I was barely legal drinking age. There's so much life out there that we both missed. At the time, I assumed I was fine with it. Now I am not so sure. Going out with Cody and his pals reminded me of the good times we used to have, just hanging out, being a little young and stupid." She spoke pretty defensively. "What part of missing out on life includes you cheating on me? What aspect of missing out on life makes it acceptable for you to have sex with someone else while married? I assumed that if nothing else, we were still friends. Friends do not betray one another like that. You truly are a piece of work. You are aware of this. I believe my mother and sister were merely lousy examples. However, it appears that all women are nothing but bitches." Okay, I had to stop yelling when bid once. As I brought up my mother and sister, Mom's infidelity had drove my father out the door and into a bottle. 2 years after he left, I discovered him dead from alcohol poisoning when I went to his apartment for the weekend. Mom was only upset because the child support checks stopped coming. What little Dad had left went to my sister and me, and my mother spent it on a new pair of tits and a stomach tuck. She put my sister Victoria on birth control and assured her that if she got knocked up and became pregnant by a rich kid, she would be fine. Victoria was able to seduce Adam, the son of Arnold Winger, who owned Winger Auto Sales when she was 18. She turned up pregnant. Adam heard stories and had her undergo a DNA test while the baby was still in the womb. It turned out he wasn't the father, and he abandoned her. She went to a back alley abortion clinic to deal with the problem and contracted a blood infection. She went into septic shock 2 days later and died at home. Mom attempted to sue the doctor, but it appears that my sister signed paperwork that would have made legal action prohibitively expensive. When she discovered that it would cost upwards of 10 grand to try to get any money, Mom abandoned the whole idea. The following year was a living hell for me as I tried to finish school with good enough grades to possibly receive a partial scholarship while dealing with the men my mother would bring home. I saw college dormitories as a lifesaver. There's no way it could be worse than home. A month into college, I received a visit from 2 local cops. They pulled me out of class and informed me that my mother had been killed in a vehicle accident. Apparently, she and her boss were having a mid-afternoon tryst when they were confronted by his enraged, gun-wielding wife. They got into his car and rushed away, right into the grill of a garbage truck. It appears that the cocaine and alcohol in his system hindered his ability to drive safely. I was able to obtain the majority of my money returned from college for the semester, as I had to withdraw to take care of circumstances as they were. We had a paid-for house. Mom owned a car and, surprise, had a 401k with about $100,000 in it. There was a savings account with $4,300. I also discovered a stockpile of DVDs and cash. The DVDs were labeled retired. Against my better judgment, I inserted one and discovered what was clearly a covert tape of my mother screwing some guy. The cash totaled about $9,000. I wasn't surprised. I spent the month cleaning and completing papers. I had a couple of guys stop over to offer their respects. I didn't watch the films, but I thought some of them were the guys from the clip. I sold the house, deposited the proceeds in the bank, and returned to the winter semester. I lived as simply as possible, focusing solely on my studies. I had a couple gals ring me up when they wanted to be laid, and I was more than willing to park my Johnny in a warm hole for a while. I was unimpressed with the female of our kind. They were enjoyable to play with, but getting too close was a pain in the butt. I finished in the top 25% of my class and found work as a manager for a growing construction company. I went out to the pub with a group of guys, and a group of girls joined us. My attitude has softened to the point that I wondered if there was a decent woman out there. I believed I'd hit the jackpot when I met on a blind date. I was a few years older than her, but she appeared rather cool. Her accounting degree was still wet, but she had secured a respectable position with the state police in forensics. I believed I was living my best life. It turns out that all women are scum. Samantha was tearing up now. That really ticked me off. She decides that she wants out of our marriage, stabbed me in the back. She feels awful after screwing up another guy. Hell no, I literally felt a rip inside me. I immediately stopped caring. You will be served on Wednesday at noon at work. I've indicated what I want to take from the apartment. The stuff will be gone tomorrow. You keep your car, I'll keep mine. My name is taken off the lease at the end of this month. If you want it after the beginning of the month, you can have it all to yourself. I grabbed half of the money from the account. I want the credit card paid off and canceled. I don't expect this to get nasty, mostly because I don't want to see you lying, skanky, stinking. But again, I took a deep breath. I had to calm down because I was repeating myself. Tell your boy Toy to keep away from me. I know he was only taking something that was readily given up, so I'm not going to go after him. If he crosses my way, I will put him down. Not because you deserve my attention. Someone should teach him a lesson, since a real man does not go after married women. And if he comes across my path, I'll gladly show him. If not me, it will be the husband of the next married woman he decides to hit on. She winced at my tone. Too awful. I grabbed the luggage I'd packed and brushed by her. I'll pick up the stuff with tape tomorrow while you're at work. If you wish to challenge it, remove the tape, and I will include it in the divorce documents so that the judge can make his decision, I said as I walked out the door. She did not contest the divorce at all. When Mom died, I placed all of the proceeds from the sale of her house and other assets in a trust. My accountant informed me that as long as the trust kept all of my money, it would not count toward my net worth for student aid. She also suggested that I invest the money so it wasn't simply sitting there. It turns out she was wrong. Money held in trust does count for financial aid, at least how she set mine up. It did. She went out of business after a year. Another example of women being dumb bitches. Because I had all of the trust funds invested, it was easier to take out school loans. Because of her inept device, I ended myself with almost $13,000 in college debt. Fortunately, my firm offered a program that paid $5,000 each year on student loans. I was going to be okay. The end result of that horrible relationship with my accountant was beneficial. Overall, while the trust did not protect me from student aid, it did protect me from divorce because I had never named Samantha as a trustee. There was around $600,000 in there that the bitch couldn't reach. I moved out of my apartment and found a little furnished loft near work. I didn't want anything to do with the bitch, so I left everything to my lawyer. There was some conversation about my 401k and how to make things easier and shorter. I ended up giving her a check for $15,000 and walking away. After the dust had settled, it became clear why she didn't ask for help. The silly bitch had knocked herself up and was planning a summer wedding. I suppose all that complaining about not wanting to be tied down was simply nonsense. For the next year, I immersed myself in my work and was rewarded with a new position. I was now the company-wide improvement assessment coordinator. We had acquired a number of smaller companies, and it was my responsibility to make them more efficient. I was transferred all around the country and tasked with bringing the new companies into line. My moniker was the Machete Man, mostly because one of the first things I did was cut the dead weight. The majority of these organizations had staff who had been there for 10 or 15 years, but were not doing well. I'd give them one chance to get it together, and if they didn't, they were gone. I discovered that employees who had been there for less than 10 years were more eager to make the necessary modifications to keep their employment. I knew I wasn't targeting the more senior individuals, but I ended up with a reputation for coming in and firing senior employees. I was treated like a pariah by both management and hourly employees, and I didn't give a damn. I was not there to make friends. I was there to make money for the firm. Rainbows and butterflies were not going to pay their expenses. In terms of love, I was turned off by women during the first year. I hadn't met a single lady who was worth anything in my life, so why bother trying to impress them? The second year after my divorce, I felt compelled to get laid. I had a lot of money and was traveling frequently, so I decided to support the world's oldest profession. What was the quote? "You do not pay a hooker for sex, you pay her to leave." That describes some of my life wonderfully. I'd cruise into town, do my business, and then either pick up a high-end call girl or hire a discreet escort service on the last day. The sex was typically excellent, and we understood where each other stood. I should have done this all along. Screw that relationship stuff. I had no idea what the bitch I had married was doing, and I didn't care. I guess this is where I should mention that I went to counseling to get through my issues with Samantha and women in general. Nope, I think therapy is fantastic for individuals who can benefit from it, but I had no desire to change. I was experiencing a variety of no-strings-attached sex. I was keeping the majority of my paycheck and had discovered something I truly enjoyed: refurbishing antique motorcycles. I had already moved an hour away and purchased a wonderful large house on the outskirts of a little town. It has a massive pool facility that housed an antique 1969 Triumph Bonneville. I had requested that the garage be cleaned out prior to closing, but the previous owner was evidently too busy to do so. So, according to the terms of the purchase agreement, I owned everything in the entire facility at the time of possession. The ancient bike was mostly disassembled, but I fell in love with its lines. I've always been skilled with my hands, so I purchased an expensive set of Mac tools and got to work. When the owner attempted to take the bike from me, it was already 75% restored. We talked around and about, but the bottom line was that he gave it up by not taking it out, and it was mine. I offered him $1,500 to sign the title over to me. It was easier than arguing in court. After that, I discovered a 1963 BSA Gold Star Spitfire that needed some work. I was hooked. I was far from a professional, but I was improving rapidly. I was meant to sell one bike and then purchase a new project bike, but that did not seem to materialize. I wound up with a good collection of restored vintage motorcycles. So here I was, divorced for 7 years. There's plenty of money in the bank. I was good at my job, a satisfying hobby, and all the sex I could afford. I was pretty damn satisfied until I returned home with a new throttle cable for my most recent buy and discovered an old, beat-up Toyota automobile waiting in my driveway as I drove past it. I noticed a woman get out of the automobile. I got out and was very much face-to-face with my ex. Jewels belong to a wife. If there was any way to avoid it, you would never have seen me again. I made a mistake with you, and as much as I regret it, I can't go back and fix anything. But it's not for me. This is for my daughter. She rushed to say, our daughter. She gave me a picture of a gorgeous little girl with a huge smile who was missing a few baby teeth. It appeared that the photo was taken at a mall or someplace. She was adorable. She's cute. It's so bad that her mother is such a jerk. What are you attempting to do, Paul, by stating she is mine? Hell, as much as you were playing around at the end of our marriage, it could have been anyone. I heard the Fifth Fleet was in town at that time. I responded. She exhaled. Alex, take as many shots as you want at me. I am well aware that I made a huge mistake. I was a terrible person who deserved everything you could say to me. Me? But our kid has leukemia and need a bone marrow donor. I'm not being overdramatic when I say she'll die without it. All other options have been exhausted. She is on a donation list, but it may take years, and she only has a few months. As for how I know she is yours, Cody is sterile, and you are the only person I have had intercourse with besides him. Go ahead and hate me. Most of the time, I loathe myself. If you want to bring me inside and take some swings at me, go ahead. However, please go have yourself checked to determine whether you match. She was crying at this moment. I wasn't impressed. So you want me to undergo an intrusive operation to assist a daughter who may or may not be mine and has been reared by another guy, a man who was present for her first steps? These are her first words, her first lost tooth. Moments I missed because you couldn't tell whose fire hose was in your holes. At what time? Did you tell her about me? Would this tiny child be able to identify me in a lineup, even if I was the sperm donor? You can't call me her father. The title goes to the man who was there for her. By the way, where's the small cock? I knew you two were in love because you married so quickly after stabbing me in the back. I replied, and I noticed she had a sad expression on her face. Cody left us after he discovered he was not her biological father. His parents forced him to take a test, and the results revealed no shared markers. It turns out that he is sterile and has probably been for his entire life. I don't miss him at all, yet it breaks my heart and irritates me that he left Ava crying in a hospital bed and never returned. You are correct. He is the only parent she knows. It wounded her terribly to be abandoned like that. So there is some vengeance for you. I am a divorced single mother, living on welfare and attempting to assist a chronically ill child, she said. Look, she continued, my life has gone to hell during the last 2 years. Please pause for 2 seconds. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support is a great inspiration and encouragement for us. Thank you very much. Believe me when I say that any vengeance you would seek on me has come full circle. Ava has been the sole bright spot in my life since we split up. If you want to know more, you must arrange an appointment to be tested. Here is Ava's contact information, as well as a few other photos. Thank you, Jules. Get tested, she sobbed, as she turned to run back to her room. Her departure was slightly delayed since the engine took 3 efforts to start. When she drove away, I noticed drops of oil on my driveway and wanted to use the cat litter to mop it up. I considered her request carefully. I am an asshole, and I am not ashamed to acknowledge it, but I am not the sort to let a child die if I can avoid it. Even if it turns out she wasn't mine, no 7-year-old should be in that situation. I was shocked at how quickly I decided to be tested. I stepped inside and made the call. It turns out that she was correct. Ava was my biological kid. The test also revealed that I was a close enough match that they were willing to risk the bone marrow transplant. I went in and booked everything without informing Samantha. My previous office used to conduct a background check on Samantha. There's a hole within another hole. Parents. Everything she had told me appeared to be true. Shit had left her high and dry, even going so far as to have their marriage annulled. Samantha has been squeaking by as an assistant and waitress for the past 2 years. Apparently, she spent all of her time in hospital. Even with Medicaid, the medical bills were high. Overall, things were not looking well for both her and Ava. I chose to sell my bike collection to free up funds for medical bills and delinquent child support, which I knew I would have to pay. It was funny. I had turned down all offers to sell my bikes, but when I discovered I had a daughter, the decision was clear. I went to the HR manager and astonished her by requesting for 4 weeks leave and adding my daughter to my insurance coverage. I could tell she wanted the whole story, but she was one of those bitches who would tell the entire world what happened in her office. I was especially quiet when interacting with her. I arrived at the hospital with a stack of paperwork for Samantha to sign in one hand and the largest teddy bear I could find in the other. My heart nearly broke when I saw the tiny figure with no hair and a slew of tubes running in and out of her body. I struggled to hold back tears when she opened her eyes and smiled at me. I could feel my entire world shifting at that instant. I knew I was going to defend this young kid from anything or anybody who sought to hurt her. I disregarded Samantha's attempt to hug me and went up to the hospital bed. Hey, it was all I could come up with. Hello, my name is Ava. Mom tells me you're my true daddy, she said. Yeah, it turns out I might be able to help you get better. Have I brought you a bear? I said. Her eyes grew huge and she reached as far as she could for it. Her wide smile became even broader. She took it from me and wrapped it in a tight hug. Thank you very much. What is his name? She asked. It was a freaking stuffed animal. Why did it need a name? They said you'd know what it was once you picked him up. It was my brilliant reaction. It's Kyle, she said confidently. Hello, Kyle. Thank you for visiting to keep me company. She addressed the bear. Thank you for bringing Kyle to me, Alex. She spoke to me. I was about to lose it right there. If you had put me in the situation the little child was in, I would have been shrieking in rage and sorrow. Instead, she was grateful for a silly stuffed toy. I tilted my head slightly and caught a glimpse of Samantha. Her face was filled with passionate pride for her daughter, my assessment of Samantha. The mother went to tremendous lengths to keep shit together, as she has and continues to raise. This little angel was incredible. She was still a haughty wife. Abe had fallen back asleep, but she was clutching her teddy bear as tightly as she could. This transplant stuff should have worked better. I knew if it was within my ability to make something happen, I would. I nodded to Samantha and we proceeded down to the cafeteria for coffee. I moved the papers towards her. Here's the paperwork to add her to my insurance. I will have a $1,500 deductible, after which everything will be paid for. Fortunately, they have not yet removed the existing conditions rider from the healthcare system, so she will be fine. I've also had them start sending me healthcare invoices. I should be able to pay for everything within a few months. I informed her that I wasn't going to tell her that I had $50,000 from bike sales sitting around waiting to be spent. It was great to see the strain leave her body. For a brief moment, she resembled the lady I remembered. I had not realized how much weight she was carrying. Thank you, Alex, for everything. I understand you have every right to dislike me, but I appreciate you doing it for her, she replied, her eyes filled with tears. This is what I would have done if I had known, Samantha. I had our firm. I do a background check on both you and the a-hole. By all accounts, you've been an excellent mother. I'll punish the a-hole soon enough for abandoning my daughter. But don't think I forgot how you decided to end our marriage for a little pleasure. Don't think for a minute that I won't hold you accountable for missing her first words. Her first steps coincided with her first bike ride. You could have been a wonderful mother, but you were a terrible wife. I told her she had lowered her head and I could hear sniffles. Years ago, they would have broken my heart. However, they no longer had any influence on me. I passed another package of papers across to her. I said, this is a preliminary custody agreement, which made her head jerk up. I will not take her away from you, but I do want to be a part of her life. I propose getting her every weekend and 1 month throughout the summer, with alternate holidays. This is very ordinary stuff. Please review it and let us know if anything needs to be changed. I'm going to need copies of her birth certificate and such. Do you happen to have them with you? She gazed at me as if searching my face for something, but I'm not sure what. Then she looked down. I'll have to get those for you. My car died, so I took the bus this morning. I'll bring them with me tomorrow, she murmured softly. My stomach grumbled. It was time for lunch, and I wanted those documents quickly. Let's go grab something to eat that isn't hospital food while she sleeps, and we can get what we need later, I recommended. She nodded and dried her tears. Great. I was going to have lunch with a woman who was crying. How did I get into this mess? Lunch was intriguing, to say the least. We sat looking at each other for 20 minutes, only breaking the silence when we told the waitress our order. For so long, I wanted to rip into this woman, and my imagination conjured up every terrible thing I could think of to throw at her. But I couldn't manage it. I took a deep breath and reflected on why it came down to the fact that I would have to deal with this woman for the foreseeable future, as well as the realization that she was beaten outside of her relationship with her kid and that she had nothing. She made her decisions and was living with the repercussions. My sense of justice, whatever distorted it may be, was gratified. I still didn't trust or like her at this point, but I wasn't going to dislike her any longer. "I'm not going to hit you," I murmured as the thought crossed my mind. She flinched and gave me a weird expression. "When you first approached me, you stated I may swing at you. I'm not going to do that. In fact, I'm going to hang into work very hard to let go of my hate and fury toward you. We have a kid, and I will not poison her life the way my parents did mine. You'll never be my favorite person, but I'd rather let go of my resentment and ensure that our baby has a loving and secure environment." When I explained more, she relaxed a little. "I know you wouldn't hit me, Alex, even though I believe I deserve it. I just wanted you to know," she said. "Stop." I spoke a bit too loudly. "I do not want to hear your apologies. Nothing you say will change what you did or how you did it. Okay, the most fundamental reality is that you did not want to marry me and preferred to behave as if you were single. You could have told me you wanted a divorce, but instead you went behind my back and drilled with your little boy toy before coming home and acting as if nothing had happened. It was not a mistake. It was a deliberate action. You are not the victim, and I have no pity for how your life has turned out. If we hadn't had a daughter, I wouldn't have wanted to see you again. But we do have a child, and I am going to do everything in my power to provide her with the finest life possible. This contains a mother and father, so let's eat and discuss how we're going to make that little girl's life better." She spent the next 20 minutes looking down at her burger and then up at me. We had a wonderful talk about Ava and how we were going to fight the cancer. It was honestly rather comfortable. They resided in a bad neighborhood. I knew they lived in government-assisted housing, but I had no idea how bad things were in that area of town. I parked my truck and let Samantha get out to fetch the goods. There were 3 males hanging by the entrance to her apartment building, all with their pants down to their knees. I was parked near my pickup in this neighborhood. She had been gone for about 15 minutes when she emerged and strolled by the gangbangers. That was such a ridiculous expression. When they approached her, I got out of my truck. "Hey, Chicana, you're too lovely to be living alone around here. You need a man to look after you, don't you?" The moron spoke as he walked into her area. My heart was beating as I removed my revolver from the belt holster. My .357 had been replaced with a Glock 19. I know many people believe that the 40 cal cartridge is superior, but I shoot a lot in 9mm. Rounds are inexpensive. Let's face it, I was never going to get involved in a gunfight anyway. That's what I thought until just a few minutes ago. Now I was not so sure. She already has a man watching out for her, so why don't you move out of the way before I abandon you all like a terrible habit? My voice may have been unsteady, but my gun remained focused on the leader. The kid turned around and Samantha dashed toward the truck. He tried to go into his waistline, but stopped when he realized I had him dead to rights. I observed the 2 behind him were afraid, but the leader simply gazed at me with hard eyes. "If you reach for that piece, I will put you down, and all you will see is a fearful man defending his friend against all the spics who are coming up here and taking our jobs. They'll probably award me a medal for shooting you 3, so let's just settle down and let me and my wife get into the truck and leave here. Then you can continue to kill each other for whatever reason you wish," I said as I began to move backwards while keeping the rifle firm on the dangerous person. I was able to get back in and sit down, all while holding him in place with my rifle. I turned on the key and put it in drive before breaking eye contact. I accelerated and heard 3 loud pops before turning a corner and moving forward. I sped through the following 2 lights and got onto the interstate as quickly as possible. After about 15 minutes, I realized nobody was following me and slowed down. My heartbeat was racing. Samantha was sobbing in the passenger seat next to me. "You are not returning my kid to that shithole," I growled. "What do you need to get from your apartment?" "All we had were our clothing and a few dishes," she replied as she regained control over her emotions. "A lot of our belongings are still in the storage container, but I'm likely to lose them within the next month. I'll buy you new clothes and get her new toys." I said, "We'll get your stuff out of storage and you'll move into my place for now. I own a 4-bedroom house with 2 bathrooms. You'll take one, Ava will take the other. You will be responsible for cooking and cleaning until you can find work and get back on your feet. You will not bring any lovers into the house, and I will not bring any girlfriends. I go around once a month to check on various plants and such." My house will not be your sex paradise. Book a room or bang at his apartment. I am absolutely serious about this. If I discover you're bringing guys over to the house, I'll kick you out and take full custody of Ava. She looked at me, then at the floor. I am not seeing anyone, Jules. I haven't had the time or desire in the last 3 years. Don't worry, I don't see it changing very soon. Thank you. I know you want me around like you want a hole in the head, but it will be good to have a safe haven to retreat to. She spoke quietly. You should thank Carlos, I replied. Carlos was my best friend growing up. We made an odd couple, with me being a low-income white trash nobody and him being an adoptive Hispanic affluent lad with 2 elderly white parents. We did everything together until he became ill when he was 16. Then I'd go to see him in the hospital whenever I could and see him deteriorate as cancer ate him from the inside out. He died 2 days before his 18th birthday. Mr. and Mrs. Jackson passed away 3 years later. Every day I envied my friend for the love and support he had from his 2 parents. I wanted to convey to my daughter that it was too late for me to become a regular, well-adjusted adult. If I could instill that sense of love and support in my daughter, I might be able to put up with the bitch wife for a while. We pulled her belongings out of storage and had her settled into the extra bedroom within the next several days. I may have gone a little wild with Ava's room decorations, but she was my only kid over the next few days. I prepared myself for the procedure. I dislike hospitals, and I am certain that the nurses who were assigned to me purposefully used the most blunt needles they could find. But I got through it all. It took 1 week. Ava rallied for a month, then it was discovered that it did not take. So I was out for another week while they tried again. Again, it did not work, but there was such a great response that the physicians were eager to try again. Finally, 4 months after the final treatment, I welcomed Ava into her new home. This is where I tell you how Samantha and I fell back in love. Nope, it didn't happen. I know it seems strange, but I thought of Samantha as 2 distinct persons. Samantha's mother was capable of being warm, caring, supporting, and patient. That was the Samantha who cared for both Ava and me. Ava had missed so much time at school that we decided to homeschool her for a while to catch her up. Samantha kicked, but despite this, she began educating Ava while keeping the house tidy and dinner on the table. Then there was Samantha, his wife. I'll never forget how much she devastated me when the wife cheated on me and concealed the fact that I had a daughter for her. Every now and again, I wondered if Samantha was all right. Anger would return. It sucked. I could tell Samantha was upset about how things turned out, but I wasn't in the mood to hear anything that sounded like an apology. After exhausting my sick leave, I returned to work. My first day back almost killed me since I missed my kids so much. As I went out the door, I became enraged and envious that Samantha would get to spend time with our kid while I had to go to work. Every time I left, the rage grew. I utilized it to be especially brutal when it came to cutting costs on my next job. The employer would have been pleased with a 7 to 12% reduction in expenses. I was able to push things to a planned 16% decrease by reducing employee benefits and firing off some of the senior employees. I didn't only cut hourly workers, though. The plant was packed with managers, and by the time I finished, 3 had been given their walking papers. I could see the plant manager was happy to see me leave. I didn't obtain a flight out of the town until the next day, so I went to the 2-star airport hotel where I was staying and hung out in the bar downstairs. I never stayed in luxury hotels when I traveled. It looked awful enough when I came in and carried folks to reduce overhead. Consider how it would appear if I were staying at the swankiest hotel while doing it. As I sat there drinking my pricey, watered-down scotch, I noticed a lovely brunette walk in. I had done this dance previously, and I knew she had probably gone out at a handful of clubs uptown. She was probably trawling down here, hoping to salvage the night. Fortunately, I was horny and had enough money to cover her cost for the night. We made small conversation and danced around the topic of pricing. I led her up to my room after leaving my wallet and valuables with the front desk clerk. The room had a safe, but all she needed was a rifle or a knife, and I'd unlock it and give her everything she wanted. She was professional enough to text her time and location to someone, be it a friend or a pimp. We went in and I placed 400 on the nightstand. He gave me a weird look. Throughout our chat, the figure 300 came up several times. It's been over 6 months, so I'm hoping you'll be willing to spend some extra time talking to me tonight, I replied with a grin. In response, she pushed her dress down, revealing a black lace bra and pant pair. Not saying much, but she was good at sex. She didn't say much, but did a really decent job. It took almost 20 minutes, but I eventually felt my body tense as I filled the rubber. She slid out from underneath me and began to dress. She checked her makeup in the mirror, straightened her hair, got the money off the nightstand, and wished me good. I took care of the rubber before going to bed. I slept like the dead. The next morning, I sat in my uncomfortable coach seat. I recalled yesterday night's rendezvous. It was good, there is no doubt about that. I've had a lot of paid-for girls, and she ranks right up there. But something seemed odd. I resolved not to worry about it too much. And as the plane landed, I was thinking about what I could get. Ava. My young girl had adjusted nicely, and she would be ready to start second grade this autumn. I made sure Samantha had enough money to buy any clothing or toys she required. Was she too young to use one of those new drawing tablets? And what about a cell phone? She was going to turn 9 years old. Do 9-year-olds need cell phones? I'd have to ask some buddies. Who am I kidding? I had no friends. My assistant had children. Maybe she'd know. I got my small kid a cuddly frog from the airport gift store. I was thoroughly enjoying my new role as a father. When I got home, the fragrance of dinner cooking was delicious. But what made it more better was my daughter's squeal and hug. She was wearing a new dress and putting her hair up with a ribbon. Mom purchased me a new clothing so that I could look nice for you when you arrived home. She also believes I have enough hair to get a new haircut. Do you like it, Dad? She asked. I couldn't help it. My eyes welled up with emotion. I started tearing up. This tiny girl was the missing piece in my life. You are very stunning, honey. That dress is extremely lovely. Your new haircut makes you look like a princess. I responded by giving her a big embrace and kiss. I've got something for you. I continued as I opened the retail bag and took out the frog. The woman behind the counter mentioned that this guy needed a name, and I knew you would have the ideal one for him. She nearly squealed with excitement and stared at him for a few seconds. It's Randy. Hello, Randy. I'm going to introduce you to Kyle the bear. You're going to be great buddies. She spoke to the toy. She started walking towards her room, then turned around and gave me another big hug. Thank you, Dad. That young kid was awesome. I looked at her mother, who had tears in her eyes. I almost lost my wonderful feeling when I realized Samantha had withheld this from me. I could have had this all the time for the previous 8 years. I suppressed the thinking. My mother was a nasty bitch about life, and I wasn't going to let my resentment of Samantha contaminate my connection with my kid. I forced a smile on my face. When? She must have been affected by my mood fluctuation as she became really somber. I faked a smile on my face. Dinner smells wonderful. I attempted to speak in a regular voice. Thank you, Alex. I found an old batch of recipes and attempted to make the chicken parmesan. Exactly way you like it, she responded. This was going to be a treat because her chicken parmesan was to die for. I'm certain it will be, I answered with genuine enthusiasm. She was doing her best to portray Ava with the most typical home life imaginable. I could do the same. Besides, I had to confess it was wonderful to have my clothes taken care of and the house cleaned. My kid and her mother had been with me for 3 months by this point. Ava was such a delight, and if I had to deal with Samantha, I could do it. I didn't want her to leave since I was certain she'd take Ava. I had discussed obtaining primary custody of my kid, but my lawyer warned that with my work schedule and general lack of parenting experience, it would be a long uphill battle. Furthermore, a girl requires her mother. Ava had returned to regular school around a year after they had moved in. Samantha had done an excellent job of teaching her not only the required knowledge, but also how to study and pay attention, and she was consistently on the honor roll. I lived in High Cotton. I had my ashes carried once or twice a month during my out-of-town trips. My house was immaculate, and my clothes were properly cared for. Dinner was on the table, and my little child was the apple of my eye. Samantha and I had settled into a comfortable lifestyle. She was coming out of her shell. She surprised me by asking if she may use the car to try to find work. I had purchased a newer used Subaru wagon for her to drive Ava around and pick up groceries, etc. It ran well and had an excellent safety rating. Samantha, as far as I am concerned, that car is yours. I'll never use it. If you move out and it's old enough, the resale value that will be zero. Why don't I just put the title under your name? If something happens to me, where do I have it set up? Everything goes to Ava. It will be held in trust until she's 18. Then she can do whatever she wants. You should have a car to assist her until she is able to get around alone, I said, and I could see her cry up. Thank you, Alexei. You've been so wonderful to us, and I'm not sure why. You should know by now that I would not prohibit you from seeing Ava, even if I could. And child support would be little more than what you were paying for the two of us to be here. Why are you so good to us? Or more specifically, me, she asked. I considered how I wanted to word this. This was also the first moment I recognized I was no longer furious with her. I had previously held it back, trying not to reveal it for Ava's sake, but now I had no resentment against her. I exhaled deeply and gathered my thoughts. My mother's anger and hatred poisoned both me and my sister. I didn't want to tell Ava about it, so I stamped it down. Make no mistake, if Ava hadn't come into my life, I'd probably have hated you till my death. But things are different now. The quick answer to your question is that Ava likes you and I like you. I believe we can move forward as friendly, if not friends, I responded. The tears flowed freely and she walked up to hug me. For some reason, my allergies flared up and my eyes became moist. It felt good to release the rage and hurt. Don't get me wrong, there was still animosity, but it wasn't the main focus anymore. Ava walked down to the kitchen and noticed us hugging and crying. She decided she needed to join in on the hugging, so the three of us held each other for a long time. Epilogue. My heart was bursting with pride as my daughter crossed the stage to receive her graduation. Samantha was sitting next to me, clutching my hand, her eyes filled with sorrow. Ava had gotten into Harvard and was leaving us in a few months. That was all she could talk about. Thankfully, she had received several scholarships, and her education fund will cover the rest. I didn't want to inform my daughter that she couldn't attend her preferred school, but I wasn't sure I could afford full tuition at an Ivy League institution. Regarding the hand-holding with my ex-wife, she obtained a bone and moved out of the house approximately 6 months after we spoke. We finally sat down, and she described as best she could why she left me. It was a combination of being away from our friends and family, as well as making new friends that made her miss her carefree days. Epilogue. Shithead saw this and slipped inside her pants. After that, she decided she wanted to be single again. Since she knew I would abandon her, I discovered out she only married him because she was pregnant and afraid of being a single mother. He only married her after his parents coerced him into accepting responsibility. She maintains she never realized Ava wasn't his until the test. I believe she is in denial about that one, but I'm not making a big issue about it. As for the shithead, sometimes karma throws a softball that you can easily bat out of the park. Our corporation purchased his company. Guess who they send in to monitor production? It gets even better. Shitheads. Father had worked at the company for 19 years and had obtained his son a job. Both father and son, along with 11 other employees, were given their walking papers. They didn't connect for about a month, and then we started receiving threatening phone calls and emails. My actions had been supported by previous practice and performance reports. They sued my company, but we dragged it out for so long that their attorney became dissatisfied with the delay. Shithead saw this and slipped inside her pants. After that, she decided she wanted to be single again. Since she knew I would abandon her, I discovered out she only married him because she was pregnant and afraid of being a single mother. He only married her after his parents coerced him into accepting responsibility. She maintains she never realized Ava wasn't his until the test. I believe she is in denial about that one, but I'm not making a big issue about it. As for the shithead, sometimes karma throws a softball that you can easily bat out of the park. Our corporation purchased his company. Guess who they send in to monitor production? It gets even better. Shitheads. Father had worked at the company for 19 years and had obtained his son a job. Both father and son, along with 11 other employees, were given their walking papers. They didn't connect for about a month, and then we started receiving threatening phone calls and emails. My actions had been supported by previous practice and performance reports. They sued my company, but we dragged it out for so long that their attorney became dissatisfied with the delay. Shitheads should not have handled my daughter that badly on his way out in Shitheads. Father should not have labeled my daughter a mistake. Speaking of mistakes, I believe I may have made a major one. Samantha came over to talk last night, saddened by Ava's departure. We were good friends at this stage and looked out for one another. She had dated briefly and met what she believed was a great guy. It turns out he was married. I assisted her in packing his excrement and delivered it to his wife, who was startled. We started talking and flirting, and the next thing I know, I have her on the couch wanting me to go harder and deeper. I could have lived with it, a one-time lonely quickie between two people who have a long history together. Nowhere could I have made a mistake than inviting her to stay the night and making love to her for 2 hours before we went to bed. All kinds of questions are running through my mind right now. Today, however, is about my Ava tomorrow. I suppose we'll see. I hope you enjoy that story. Here's another one. Brian Jessica was sitting outside his wife's office at 7 p.m. because that was the day he was going to end the farce. He and his wife had been discussing a marriage. Some husbands overlooked the evidence of overtime hours, since she never worked them before looking better. Girls' nights out lead to less sex at home. Not Brian. He noticed and was finished with it. Brian estimated it had been going on for 2 months. He observed the first time his wife, Jessica, wore red high heels to work. She disliked wearing heels. She would only tolerate them on exceptional occasions, such as weddings. When she dressed up in the bedroom, she wore red heels and white stockings, with a seductive lace bra and thong penny set on special occasions. Brian admired her white thigh-high stockings and enjoyed seeing her in heels. He thought they had a wonderful love life, but she seldom wore high heels to work, and he inquired about it. "What's with those heels, honey? Is there anything going on today?" he asked. She paused for a second before continuing on without turning around, saying, "I have a review meeting with my boss today. I just want to appear professional." He didn't say anything, but did he consider himself a professional streetwalker? Perhaps, but let it go. Then the overtime began. It began as an hour here and there, but eventually expanded to 2 to 3 hours multiple days a week. Once the girls' night out began, he realized what was going on. She despised nightclubs, lounges, and bars. Her concept of going out was to get dinner or coffee. She refused to drink and looked down on others who did. He followed her on her third girls' night out, where she went to a residence in Glen Ellen. He recognized the house. He has gone there countless times for gatherings. It was her boss, Greg's home. Brian waited an hour, then drove home after letting the air out of all 4 of her tires. She didn't mention the tires when she returned home that night or during the weekend, but he overheard her telling Emma, "Would you believe that someone let the air out of my tires last night?" "No way, really?" Emma spoke. "Yep, thank goodness they didn't slash them. They simply let the air out. I was able to use the air pump that your father has me store in the trunk." "So where do you go?" "Just a dance club with my mates. You should probably avoid that in the future." Jessica smirked and replied, "Sure, baby." Brian consulted with an attorney and began the divorce proceedings. That is why he was sitting outside her office. She was about to be served that night. He grieved his 21-year marriage, but overall it was pleasant. They bore his 17-year-old daughter, Emma, who was the apple of his eye and a daddy's girl. He met Jessica when he required a lawyer to resolve a contract dispute with his employer. She used to work as a receptionist and aspired to be a paralegal. He thought she was stunning and asked her out. They dated pleasantly for 2 years before he proposed, and he believed they would be happy for the rest of their marriage until she began working for Greg. He drove a truck and sometimes worked long hours, but they spent as much time together as possible. As Emma's schedule allowed, the family went on weekend getaways together. She was always involved in one or more sports or activities. Brian and Jessica would occasionally travel to Galena, Illinois to see wineries, or Lake Geneva, Wisconsin to shop and relax without Emma when she was old enough. Jessica's deception shocked him tremendously. She was becoming increasingly rude to him, but he had no idea she was cheating until he noticed the heels. It went downhill from there. Her attitude had been nasty and getting worse. He recalled the talk from that night. He followed her. "Honey, why don't we go out to supper and watch a movie tonight? I have a rare Friday off and want to spend some time with you." He said, "You know, I go out with the girls now every Friday. They rely on me as their designated driver. Let them use Uber for one night." With the extra hours you've been working and the evenings out you're having right now, I hardly see you anymore. If you had a legitimate job that didn't need you to drive at all hours of the evening and night, you might be able to visit me more often. You don't, and I've had to deal with it for 2 decades. Suck it up. I will see you later. She left without saying goodbye. He was speechless. He followed her into the garage and watched as she pulled out. He grabbed his keys and dashed out after her. There was only one entrance out of their development, and it was a confusing maze of streets to get there from their home. He managed to catch up with her as she went into Main Street and followed her to Greg's house. He avoided her for the rest of the weekend and determined to contact a lawyer on Monday. He was not going to scorch the world. He only wanted an even split, an amicable conclusion to the marriage. He sensed from her words and actions that she no longer wanted him. So why cling to a slipping rope? He felt that she could have her employer without a fight. He told his daughter about it on Monday. She is cheating on me, Pumpkin. You may not notice the difference over the last few months, but I do. She's dumped her husband and is causing problems for her employer. No way. Daddy, I do not believe it. I followed her to his home. She mentioned that she was going out with friends. She didn't. She went to her boss's house, but her tires had been tampered with at the club. No, honey, I did it. And I did it at the guy's home. When I noticed she wasn't going to the club, I can't believe it, Daddy. I don't either. But it is true. His daughter was sitting next to him, waiting for the fireworks to begin. Are you sure, Daddy? There is no chance, Emma asked. No, Pumpkin. It is over. She betrayed my faith in my heart. I cannot condone such betrayal. What if she believed she had a cause to do it? Pumpkin, there is no incentive to continue a long-term affair. If she got intoxicated and it was a one-time occurrence, perhaps she was assaulted. Of course it would be different. No, she picked this course. She betrayed my trust. Trust is the most crucial relationship you can have with someone. You cannot love someone you do not trust. I could never love someone who would betray me like that. Our marriage is ended. Emma looked out the window and noticed 2 men approaching the automobile. What an idiot, Jessica muttered, staring out the window of their legal office as Greg beat her from behind. I'm glad for the one-way gold-tinted glass. I can't believe it. Ah, he assumed he would get me first. Try harder, baby. I'd like to climax at the same time. It's heading down. Greg drove in as hard as he could, hammering her as he approached his own climax. There was no making love there. It was completely animalistic. It took him 6 months to bring Jessica in, and he was grooming her to replace his wife, who had recently received the final divorce decree, ending their 19-year marriage. He was bored of his ex-wife's whining and moaning over everything. He was tired of her weight increase. He was irritated of her lack of sexual desire. He felt uncomfortable to be seen with her, and when his twins went to college, he broke free. Jessica was the same age as his wife, but she looked more elegant. She had the fit body of a 30-year-old and was stunningly attractive. Greg was already enhancing her clothing, and she was going to be an excellent partner's wife. The knock on the glass startled Brian. Are you Brianne Jessica rolling down the window? He answered, yes, you have been served. Please review the documents attentively. There is a restraining order directing you to stay 100 yards away from Jennifer Jessica, and your marital home. What? Emma issued a restraining order. Emma took the envelope from his grasp and read the header for the dissolution of marriage. She found the restraining order and gave it to him. What the hell? He shouted. Oh my God. No, Emma spoke. I promise, Daddy, I didn't know. What exactly are you talking about? She handed him the remaining papers. The paperwork includes various accusations, spousal abuse, child abuse, and sexual assault against a minor. Emma, Daddy, I swear I had nothing to do with it. It is a lie or an error. Wait, how did she know I would be here now? It's because I informed her. His daughter whispered the words that destroyed his heart. When you informed me that she was cheating on you, I confronted her. She explained that she only did it because she had an investigator's report stating that you were cheating on her. You cannot be serious. Have you seen the report? No, I didn't. You believed her, not me. You let her set you up, darling. Why? I really love you. Why would you do this to me? I asked that you not say anything. I promised, Daddy, I wasn't aware of the restraining order. That abuse notion is ridiculous. I swear I said nothing like that to anyone. He has silently cried, ignoring her pleads. Moments later, he remarked, "You must leave now, Emma. I can't be within 100 yards of you anymore, he added quietly. "Daddy, no," she shouted. "Go, or I could be arrested on top of it all." "The sheriff is still here watching me read more," he explained. "Oh, Jesus. They froze all of my accounts for shit. What will I do now? Congratulations to you both. You have devastated me. I cannot even afford to fight her. Goddamn high-powered law company with all of these false allegations. I'll be fighting in court indefinitely." "Oh God, no, I'll repair it, Daddy," she said as she exited the car and dashed to the office building. Greg exploded into Jessica with a sigh of contentment. "That was wonderful," she remarked. "I wish I had binoculars to see his face." Greg had just buckled his belt, and Jessica was straightening her dress when a screaming Emma burst into the office. "You bitch! Child abuse or sexual abuse? What's wrong with you?" Emma yelled. Jessica replied, "I had to have the advantage. I needed to strike first. He can't get into the house or access my money for a while. Now I have the upper hand over him." "He did not abuse me. I don't know for sure. You two are incredibly close," Jessica remarked, smirking. Emma stepped up to her and inquired, "He did not cheat, did he? Of course not. Who'd want him? Him?" She replied with a laugh. "You are a monster," Emma exclaimed as she tightened her fist to attack her mother, but instead slapped her with all of her might. Jessica collapsed to the ground in shock and pain. Greg laughed and remarked, "Nice it, kid." Emma froze and looked around. She noticed bookcases, shelves, and a cluttered desk. She grinned, looked at Greg, and brushed everything off his desk. Emma stared at him calmly and stated, "You'd better not cross my path again, asshole." "I could and will do worse," and walked out. "Emma, wait! Damn it!" Jessica yelled. "Greg stated that the little bitch is gonna pay for this." As she walked out, she passed a man holding an envelope who questioned, "Are you Jessica in there?" She muttered this and stormed out. Jessica and Greg chuckled as she was served with Brian's divorce petition. Emma attempted valiantly to speak with her father out of fear. He knew he couldn't speak to her, so he didn't respond and cried whenever he saw her call. He was scared Jessica would find out and call the cops on him for violating the restraining order. Jessica had already alienated him from all of his friends, and only his parents and brother believed he was innocent. His sister-in-law refused to let him near his niece and nephew in case it was true. That almost wrecked her marriage to his brother before George persuaded Emma to disclose the truth. He couldn't figure out what he'd done to earn Jessica's wrath, let alone his daughter's betrayal. Even though she was unaware of the assault allegations, she informed her mother that he knew about her affair and when she would be served. She even lied, claiming she wanted to with him to support him while Jessica served. However, she realized he was being served and said nothing. Emma looked for someone to aid her father. She found her mother's divorce papers and discovered that the attorney worked at her mother's office. So going to see him was out. She nicknamed Grandpa George. She thought George, Brian's father, might help. "What do you want, young lady?" he said. "Grandpa, we have to assist Daddy. I'm not sure who to contact to get him aid. He isn't taking my calls. I cannot believe what you did to your father." "Emma, what were you thinking when you helped your mother?" "Grandpa, it's all lies. I did not accomplish anything. It's just my mother and her jackass lawyer boyfriend." "Watch your mouth, girl." "Sorry, grandfather. I vowed that I did not accuse him of any of that, and I had no clue she would react so violently when confronted." "All right, I will see what I can do." "Grandpa, is he there? Can I speak to him? He can't communicate with you until that order is terminated. Each time you call him, he bursts into tears because of what has happened. He is terrified your mother will discover out. He communicated with you before turning him over to the police. His lawyer stated that there is a court date scheduled for a hearing on the matter, but nothing can be done until then." Emma, crying, told Grandpapa, "Tell him I love and miss him. If I see him, I will." Emma hung up and cried for a few minutes. When she had regained her composure, she entered her mother's room and began removing her lingerie from the drawers and her newest clothing from the closet, throwing them down the stairs. She picked up the large mound, brought it out the front door, and flung it in the center of the grass. She giggled when she noticed that some of the dresses were so fresh that they still had tags on them. "Screw you, Mother," she shouted aloud before going to the shed to retrieve the lighter fluid. She soaked the clothing with the entire can and lit them with the aim and flame. She realized that it was getting near to the time her mother would be home. Emma smiled as she had an idea. As Jessica pulled into the driveway, she noticed Emma seated on a lawn chair in the front yard, roasting a marshmallow over a pile of her burning garments. She shouted, ran out of the car, and yelled at Emma, "What the hell are you doing? Have you lost your mind?" "No, Mother, I'm absolutely rational. I've decided to hold you accountable for my father's inability to communicate with me. Every day that passes until I speak with him, I'll ruin more of your belongings. You'd better dismiss that fake abuse allegation as soon as possible, or more of your property will go up in flames. Emma, there is a court date on Monday. It won't be renewed. It barely lasted a brief time. I don't care, Mama, till I speak to him. Your trash goes up in smoke." "Shit!" Jessica shouted as she entered the house. She contacted Brian, but he did not respond and deleted the message before listening to it. Moments afterward, a fire vehicle and a police car arrived. A neighbor reported the fire. The police officer and one of the firefighters approached Emma. "What is this all about, young lady?" the officer inquired. "My mother wanted to get rid of some clothes that she outgrew. She told me to have a campfire with them. Emma stated you couldn't have a bonfire in your front yard." "Is she home?" he asked. "Yes, sir. If you like, I can put it out with the hose." The fireman spoke out, asking if you used anything to light it or merely lit the garments. "A complete can of charcoal and lighter fluid." She said, no water. "We have some sand. I'll put on it." The fireman stated that as they dealt with the fire, the police officer rang the doorbell. Jessica opened the door, ready to lash out, only to realize it was the cops. "Great. We will put out the fire. It's not a huge problem," Officer Jessica remarked before he could respond. "Ma'am, firefighters are doing that right now. Having an uncontrolled burning in your front yard is against city ordinance." "No, I didn't know," she answered with clenched teeth. "Here is your ticket. It's only a fine, but ma'am, there will be no need to appear in court next time. Just give them to Goodwill or St. Vincent de Paul." Less wealthy people could make use of the items, she screamed confidently as she shut the door. The next Monday, Jessica's lawyer went in court for the restraining order hearing. He did not oppose the appeal since he knew it was fraudulently obtained. It served its aim, buying time while ruining Brian's reputation. Brian's lawyer moved to pursue a perjury complaint against Jessica. The judge stated, without providing definitive proof, that the order was filed under false pretenses. "There has been no perjury. You can open that can of worms in your countersuit, in a divorce case. But you know, it's like grasping at straws." Brian, who was in a deep despair, found little solace in the fact that the restraining order had been dropped. His life was coming apart because he couldn't deal with the false allegations, frozen assets, cheating wife, and what he saw as the worst of all, his daughter's betrayal. He was just scraping by mentally. He took time off from work. He drank excessively and was unpleasant to be around. He went to his residence during the day, knowing Jessica and his daughter would not be present. He discovered that she had changed the locks, but he tested his garage door opener, which worked inside the garage. He recovered all of his possessions. There were several boxes inside. His clothing was in garbage bags. He realized she had left him the wedding album and all of the photos of the happy family that used to be displayed throughout the house. He took those out, put them in front of the door that connected to the home, and pissed on them. He maintained communication with his parents and sibling, but his troubles caused strain on their relationships. His parents begged him to go to a psychiatrist, but he refused. He didn't believe he needed a psychiatrist to inform him that his life was terrible, and there was nothing he could do to change it. Jessica's law firm waged an unrelenting war. She even informed his employer about the restraining order and allegations of violence. Brian was fired for reason. His contract had a morals clause. If he had a better frame of mind, he would have understood that he could battle it and probably win. But he was simply going through the motions at that time. Nobody knew where Brian was living. He only communicated with his family via the phone. The last time anyone saw him was during a mandatory divorce court appearance, and he refused to speak with anyone other than his attorney and the judge. Emma attempted to speak to him on those occasions, but cried every time he passed past her without looking at her. She felt he appeared like a dead man walking. Jessica was pleased with how things were moving. She began resenting Brian months before his. Greg had turned her against him, And during his seduction, she had developed an almost loathing for Brian. After months of legal proceedings, the divorce was proclaimed final. Brian received his share of his assets back. His attorney was able to force the sale of the house while he kept his truck. He couldn't get work due to false reports that he abused his daughter. We explored the town. Nobody cared that he wasn't charged with anything. He moved to Chicago where he got work as a truck driver. He was packing his possessions into the back of his pickup truck and saying farewell to his folks when Emma pulled up. "I'm sorry, Daddy, none of this should have occurred," she exclaimed as she rushed up to hug him. He cried and didn't reciprocate her hug. "You choose your mother over me without evidence. You went to her and the first domino fell." I needed the element of surprise because of the law company she worked for. I needed to be able to file first, so she couldn't counterattack. "You can see why I didn't know, Daddy. I apologize. I am leaving immediately. The fake child molesting charge isn't going away. When you're accused of something like that, there's no getting rid of it. Someday your mother and her lover will pay." "Hello, Jennifer. I loved you more than my own life. I did everything I could to ensure you had a wonderful life. I only hope you didn't grow out to be like your mother." She sobbed as her granny comforted her. That allowed him the opportunity to climb into the vehicle and drive off. "Jessica, would you marry me?" Greg inquired on the day the divorce was finalized. "Yes." "Greg?" "Oh yes," she cried and sprang up to hug him, making a small scene in the restaurant. "Let's go to your apartment and celebrate," she suggested as he paid the bill. She adored his large house and couldn't wait to move in and refurbish it. It was imperative that he remove the garish furniture and draperies chosen by his ex-wife. However, their bedroom set was going to be the first to go. Greg snickered as they walked out, noticing his ex-wife eating supper with her parents. Carol, his ex-wife, was horrified with him and his latest conquest. She noticed him as they walked past, but he didn't pay any attention. Brian walked into the truck depot and noticed Sweet Lou standing at the door. "Brian, what is the matter, man? You look like you got poo in your porridge. Divorce is finalized today." "Well, after what that bitch did to you, you should be partying today." "It is not her. It's my kid. She took the bitch aside and I can't get over that. She calls and emails me, but I simply cannot bring myself to speak with her. Perhaps I should consult a psychiatrist. Perhaps you should get laid," a voice came from behind them. "Hey, Marianne, it is not a bad idea," Lou asked. "Who would want my dried-up old Johnny?" Brian stated. Marianne leaned in and said, "Me, big boy," as she flicked his earlobe with her tongue. She went away, and the males shook their heads, watching her ass as she departed. "Go for it, Brian-o. She's a great lady." "What the hell?" "Why not?" Brian answered. "That's my boy. Now let's hit the road for their first date." Brian treated Marianne to dinner and a movie after the film. They visited Baker Square for coffee and pie. "Brian, keep your chin up, man. You are a good guy. That received a terrible break. It will work out in the end," she said. Perhaps Marianne, for a long time, I could not figure out what I had done wrong. I didn't understand why she was so hard on me during the divorce. She referred to me as a child abuser and molester, for Christ's sake. "She's a bitch, and everything is behind you now," she said, clutching his hand. "Look ahead, not going back. I will make it worth your time." He smiled as he squeezed her hand. "Let us get out of here." Marianne pulled Brian in for a kiss as she opened the front door. "Do you want to see my etchings, big boy? I'd love to." She held his hand and led him to her bedroom. The moonlight was shining through the window, giving the room a soothing bluish tint. They kissed with entwined tongues and gently undressed each other. There was nothing frantic. They were going to enjoy every moment. They had sex. And as they came down to catch their breaths, she said, "Your ex is an idiot. She wanted his money, not his dick. Well, her loss is my gain, and I intend to take advantage of it regularly." He kissed her and spoke. "Anytime, honey, anytime." A week to the day later, a figure clad in all black walked up to the rear door of a large house in a wealthy neighborhood, ready to break in. They smiled when they saw the door was unlocked, creeping cautiously through the home, hoping there are no creaks in the floorboards. They found the exact room they were looking for. The space was set up wonderfully. They understood what they needed after seeing a Facebook snapshot of their target seated at his work. The arrogant man used it as his cover shot. The closet was positioned behind and to the right of the desk, and the room was dimly lighted with only the desk lamp turned on. The closet door was tilted, yet they could see into the room clearly. They opened the door behind the desk and waited. The only reason for concern was if their target went to the closet before sitting at the desk. That would make everything messier, but the work would still be completed. Their immaculate alibi would assure them safety in either scenario. Greg came into his home office and stared at his computer monitor, which was angled on the desk. His back was entirely turned towards the closet behind him. The burglar opened the closet door softly and slithered out cautiously. Greg noticed a noise and looked up. The gun was placed on his temple, and the trigger was pulled. The rifle was placed in his grasp. A note was left on the desk, and the shooter promptly went out the door. The message simply said that the payment had been paid in full. Jessica had gotten home from shopping and stepped into Greg's office to show him the new bedding she had purchased. She shrieked as she saw the body slumped in the chair, blood flowing onto the floor. She took her cell phone from her purse, dialed 911, and reported the gunshot. She looked at him and noticed the revolver in his hand, as well as the message on the desk. She didn't touch it, but she did read what it said and understood the message. "No, Brian, no!" she cried. "What did you do?" Detective Devontae Jordan received the call and went to the Gregg residence. When he arrived, he noticed a woman crying in the living room and crime scene technicians walking in and out of the office. He assessed the situation and noticed a fresh set of golf clubs in the corner of the room. Pretty pinks. He paused to think before continuing to glance around. He examined the body and noticed the revolver still held in the victim's right hand. He asked one of the officers who arrived first, "What have we got thus far?" Attorney Gregg appears to have taken his own life with a bullet. Jessica is the homeowner's fiancée. She found the body and called 911. "Is there a note?" "Yes, sir. It's typed, not signed. It only contains one sentence." "Here you go." He handed him a plastic bag containing the note. Detective Jordan frowned and asked, "Is the fiancée the blonde in there?" "Yes, sir." "Ma'am, do you know what the note means?" Detective Jordan questioned Jessica. "Yes, it means it was not a suicide. My ex-husband killed him. Gregg despises guns. He did not own one." "Why do you believe your ex did this?" "Because he felt Gregg had taken me from him, did he?" "Did you see the deceased while you were married?" She spoke briefly while looking down, embarrassed. "Yes. Could there be anyone else who may have wanted him dead? He was an attorney, right? I guess his ex-wife was pretty pissed about being dumped." "He did?" "Corporate law. Civil clients that hardly ever saw a courtroom." "Okay, ma'am. Where were you tonight?" "Shopping." "You don't think I did it?" "I don't even know that it wasn't a suicide yet. Could you get your receipts for me, please?" "Okay." Detective Brian Jessica was visited by Detective Jordan on a sunny Sunday afternoon. "Mr. Jessica, I'm Detective Jordan. I need to ask you a few questions, please." "Sure, Detective. What up? Where were you last night?" "At around 8 p.m. "Working. I was driving the rig through Rockford. I pulled into the depot at 9:30. You could check the locks." "Where were you coming in from?" "Madison. What happened?" "Gregg was shot last night in an apparent suicide." "Apparent. Let's just say there are some inconsistencies." "Okay. Well, I couldn't have suicided him from Rockford." "No, sir. If I have any more questions, I'd like to call, if that's okay." "Sure. I'll give you my new cell number." The detective left and wasn't happy that he had to drive to northwestern Chicago to talk to Brian, and then to the other side of town, to the truck depot, to verify the alibi. He thought some more about what was bothering him about the suicide. Why would a left-handed man shoot himself with his right hand? Why did he type the note? Why was the gunshot residue on his hand such a small amount? It was present and would hold up that the victim fired the gun. But it was a strangeness. After the detective left, Brian sat at his kitchen table where he was talking to Sweet Lou. "What was that all about, Brian?" Brian laughed and said, "Would you believe my ex's fiancé offed himself? No crap. That is wicked." "Yep, I hope my alibi checks out." They laughed and clinked their beer bottles together in a toast. Jessica was sitting in the front row of the funeral, crying over the man who stole her away from her wonderful husband so easily. Tears were being shed over the man who convinced her to go nuclear and ruin a good man so she could trade up. She had been madly in love with her truck-driving husband up until she was transferred to work for Gregg. Greg targeted her and began to wear her down almost immediately. Snide comments about truck drivers, flippant comments about him when he was out of town. It was too easy for Greg. He planted the seed that she was neglected by Brian's long days and sometimes overnight runs, and it grew. She couldn't decide if she was crying for the loss of her fiancé or the loss of her husband and the death of her relationship with her daughter. It was all a waste. She didn't hear, nor would she have cared about the room buzzing about her. She didn't see the glare she was getting from Greg's ex and his daughters. They blamed her for his death. "You could have come to the funeral and paid your respects," Jessica said, walking up to her daughter who was home for the weekend from college. Emma glared at her and said, "How dare you tell me that I'm supposed to pay respect to a man that destroyed my father?" "Screw you, mother. I shouldn't even have referred to that piece of shit as a man. He's less than dog shit on my shoe." She slammed the door as she walked out of the house and drove the long drive back to school in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Detective Jordan sat in a meeting with his commander, going over the lack of progress in the case. All of the suspects' alibis. Check out Brian Jessica's truck tracker. Shows he made no stops on his way from Madison to Chicago, and the trip time was correct. The warehouse crew identified him as the driver. Jessica's receipts and the surveillance cameras placed her at Macy's, Victoria's Secret, and Starbucks in the medical examiner's window for the time of death. Greg's ex and her daughters were having dinner with her parents and her brother and sister-in-law for her birthday. Jordan said it was the ex's birthday. His commander asked, "No, they were just celebrating it. Hell, I even checked out Jessica's daughter and she was at school over 3 hours away in Wisconsin." "No chance, it was suicide," his commander asked. "It's possible. It just doesn't feel right." Well, with no suspects, no motive, and no concrete evidence that it was even a murder. Close it as a suicide. Jordan nodded and left the room frustrated. 6 months later, Jessica had Jason Davis over for dinner. That was their third date, and Jessica took him to bed after a night of lust-filled couplings. Jason went home. He cracked a beer before going to bed and sat down to check his email as he sat at the kitchen table. The gun was put to his head and fired. The gun was placed in his hand and a note was left. "The price is paid in full." Detective Jordan walked through the apartment to the kitchen before he could speak. The suicide note was handed to him. "Well, damn, looks like I was right about the other one. Now I just have to figure out who the hell did it," he said to the officer. "Any fingerprints? Mark?" he asked the technician. "Yeah, but if he had to guess right now, I'd say they are the victims." "Any witnesses who called it in?" Jordan asked. "Neighbor heard the shot and called 911. No one saw anyone come or go?" "Of course not. How'd they get in? No busted locks or windows. It looks like the balcony to me. The sliding door wasn't locked. The victim probably didn't worry about it with him being on the second floor. It wouldn't be too difficult to climb up though. I'd say anyone of reasonably average height could jump and reach the bottom and pull themselves up." "Average height for male or female?" "Average male. Tall woman?" "Where's the guy's phone?" Jordan asked. "Bagged. Over here." Jordan used his gloved hands to his last call. Just had to check the last call was made to Jessica. I will be shocked if she isn't Jessica. After going through the usual condolences and pleasantries, the detective got to work. "Miss Jessica, why do your lovers seem eager to kill themselves?" Detective Jordan asked. "It's gotta be Brian. This is him punishing me." "Where were you last night, ma'am?" "Home all night. I have an alarm system that will verify that." "Tell me about the alarm system." "When it's set, it picks up doors and windows opening." "I set it when Jason left last night and turned it off this morning." "When you came by," she said through tears, "did you turn it off at any time last night?" "No, since Emma is at school, so it would have been uninterrupted all night." "That's easy enough to check on." "So your theory is that your husband is behind these suicides that aren't?" "Yes. Who else could it be?" "When was the last time you spoke to your husband?" "Before the divorce. Have you seen him following you, or has he contacted you?" "No, he has never called me. How would he know?" "Your most recent lover." "Then?" "I don't know, but it has to be him." "Okay, that's all I have for now. Please stay close by," he said, turning to leave. "Oh, one more thing. How tall are you?" 5 feet, 9 inches or so. 5 feet, 10 inches. "Why? Just curious." "Sorry again for your loss." "Same MO," the commander said back at the police station. Yes, sir, Detective Jordan said. Keep me updated daily on your progress. This is too coincidental. I've heard of a body to die for, but never body that makes you want to kill yourself. The girlfriend's alibi is solid. I'll see if I can break it. But we'll see. I'm on my way to her hubby now, the detective said warily. Off you go then. Let me know what you get. Right. As Detective Jordan walked away, he had a bad feeling that all of the prime suspects' alibis would be as airtight as last time. Brian and Marianne were snuggling on his couch, binge-watching Jack Ryan on Prime when the doorbell rang. Detective Jordan, what can I do for you today? Brian asked, motioning him in. Sir, where were you last night at 1:30 a.m. on the road on the way back from Detroit? I pulled in at 2:30. What happened now? Do you know Jason Davis? I do not think so. He was seeing your ex-wife. He seemingly shot himself last night. No crap. Maybe she's a Black Widow serial killer or something. Maybe. Thank you. If I need anything else, I'll be in touch. Brian laughed as he closed the door. What was that all about, baby? Marianne asked. Looks like another of my ex-wife's boyfriends died. Oh my God, she gasped as she brought her hand to her mouth. Yep, thank God I have an alibi. I hope whoever is killing the creeps keeps picking times when I'm on the road. Brian? Cell phone rang. He looked and saw it was Emma, so he ignored it. Marianne frowned and said, There's never going to be a chance for her. I don't see how she misses you. She reached out to me and we've spoken. What? He shouted as he stood up. Relax, honey, she said, pulling him back down. I'm not going to interfere. It's your decision and you have to live with it. She is still your Facebook friend. She saw when I tagged you at the sushi joint I made you try last month. She stalks your Facebook just like you stalkers. She instant messaged me just to see how you were and to say that she was happy that you found someone you were happy with. She told me she will never stop trying to talk with you. She calls me once a week or so just to chat. She likes to hear where you've gone and where you're going. She was fascinated that I schedule your runs and have control over your schedule. She said that I can always make sure to have you home when I need you home, and that would help our relationship. Unlike with your ex, she always did want to know what cities I saw. We would talk for hours about the places, people, and things I saw on the road. Ever since she was little, when she was a child, I had a lot of overnight runs that got me back early. I'd make her breakfast, we'd eat, and I'd tell her about my trip. He sighed at the fond memories. Marianne, I love you, but please stay out of it. She hugged him and said, I'm not in it. I'll never push you into anything. It's entirely up to you. I flat out told her that I would not put you two together. He nodded, pulled her in tight, and unpaused the show. I just don't have anything that puts her at the scene, boss. There is no evidence that anyone was at either scene. Actually, no forced entry, no finger or footprints, and no inconsistencies in the splatter pattern. If it wasn't for the identical notes, I closed them both a suicide, Detective Jordan told his commander. The X is airtight, the commander asked, as a nuclear reactor. Shit, have you considered Greg's ex as sort of a revenge thing? Yep, she was at a club on security cameras with her new boyfriend, and her kids are away at school. Shit. 2 years later, Jessica broke her pattern and started dating Lance Forrest. She had promised herself that she wouldn't risk anyone's life by dating them more than once after the suicides. She hadn't been celibate, though. She'd relegated herself to one-night stands with bar pickups and STD. Changed her mind on that, so she needed to take a chance and settle down. After a month of dating Lance, she got comfortable. Some would say sloppy. She stopped trying to hide the relationship and was dating him in public. Lance was watching a ball game at home when the gun was put to his temple and the trigger pulled. The gun was put in his hand and the same note was left once again. The price is paid in full. This is Jordan, he said, answering the call on his cell. Hi, Detective. It's Detective Stan Anson with Schaumburg. What can I do for you, man? You have a cold case that I may have a tie into. Which one? The paid in full suicides. I've got one. No crap. Any ties to Jessica? Yes, she was his girlfriend. No way. The ex-husband's alibi is airtight, Jordan asked. Yep, driving through Madison, Anson answered. Where was she? At home. Alone, wow. The security system provided an alibi for her last time and we couldn't break it. Is it the same thing this time? Chinese food delivery. This time she ordered from her home phone and the food arrived 30 minutes later. The shot happened in that window where the neighbor who called 911. It's a 23-minute drive each way from her house to the deceased's apartment, and it's a 3-flight walk upstairs. It's close, but we don't see how she could have done it in that window. Agreed, Alana. Let's get together tomorrow and compare files. Okay. Again, all alibis were unbreakable, and there were no new suspects. The cases went unsolved. Brian and Marianne were sitting in the large auditorium, watching Emma as she walked across the stage to receive her bachelor's degree. Brian beamed with pride and had to wipe away tears as it threatened to roll down his cheek. Marianne squeezed his hand tightly and kissed him. After the ceremony, they walked out to their car, and Marianne asked him, "Honey, you love her so much. Please call her." No, she made her choice when she sided with her mother over me. She only came to regret it when she felt bad about what her mother did to me. I needed her on my side. I was in the right, but she didn't believe me and opened the door for her mother to take my life out from under me. Do you know that there are old friends of mine that still believe I molested Emma and got away with it? Marianne nodded. No, she made her choice and we all have to live with it, he finished. Marianne frowned at his stubbornness, grabbed his hand and said, "Were you this hard-headed before your divorce?" No, not even close. 5 years later, Jessica and Emma were sitting in the front row of the funeral home's viewing room. It was a large turnout for Brian and Jessica's wake and funeral procession. Brian succumbed to pancreatic cancer for weeks after walking Emma down the aisle at her wedding. He had a few new friends and co-workers that showed, and his small family went. But he didn't rebuild a large network of friends after the divorce. Most of his old friends, neighbors, and co-workers came to pay respect to the good man they used to know and lost touch with over the years. His girlfriend Marianne was there. They never married. She tried very hard to not spit on Jessica for the pain she caused her man. His best friend, Lou DeMarco, regaled Emma with stories of her dad's last few years. He filled her heart with stories she would never have known. It was Marianne that finally convinced him to hear Emma out and make up with her when he was diagnosed as terminal. He'd spent years throwing away letters, deleting emails, and ignoring calls. Their reunion was perfectly timed, as he and Marianne knew they were his months. Emma actually moved her wedding day up, costing her a fortune in fees and rush jobs. But she got her greatest wish. Her daddy gave her away their tearful reunion and walked down the aisle, gave Brian a final peace of mind before he lost his last battle. The last words he spoke were thanking Marianne for giving him Emma back and apologizing for never marrying her. She understood and never pushed him for marriage. They were happy as they were. At the viewing, Marianne told Emma how he'd always missed her and regretted his not getting in touch with Boashi her years before. Her mother asked about it, so Emma told her about some of their reconciliation. She said, "He told me that he was at my graduations in the back, away from anyone who would recognize him." "That is true," Marianne confirmed. "I was with him. He said that he followed my career as I moved up the ranks and made detective for Streamwood. He was so proud of you. He saved the clippings from the Herald. You were the youngest ever to make detective there. He loved it when they said you had a knack for criminology. And later, when the paper called you a servant of crime scenes, he almost cried." Marianne said he said it was because of all of the Columbo and CSI you guys watched together when you were little. He hoped you'd make it to Chicago or some other big city and have bigger cases. Emma smiled for most of the week, listening to stories of her dad's life after the divorce. She was happy to finally meet Marianne, who she still had been speaking with on occasion. His new life seemed as good for him as it could have been. He died a happy man. She said a final prayer after the funeral and thanked God. He finally found peace. Jessica had been trying to reconnect with Emma throughout the week and funeral. She blew it at the luncheon after the service when she made the wrong comment at the worst possible time. They were sitting alone after everyone had left when Jessica said, "Emma, I have finally found peace." "What are you talking about, Mother? I haven't been able to have a relationship for these last few years and fear that your father would kill them." Emma couldn't believe her ears. He was cleared by the police. "You worthless bitch. But now you're happy he's gone so you can get laid. You're as big a piece of crap as you ever were." "I had hoped you changed, but now I hope you rot in hell." Jessica winced. "You don't understand." Emma cut her off and said, "The next time I see you, Mother, will be when we are lowering your carcass into the ground." "No, Emma, please understand." She cut her off again, saying, "Goodbye, Mother. Good luck with your sex life." That was the last time she ever spoke to her mother. 10 months later, Jessica was having dinner with her boyfriend Kyle at an expensive steakhouse. When Kyle got serious, Jessica, these last 8 months have been so wonderful for me. Squeezing his hand, she said, I agree. Kyle, I wasn't sure I would ever love again, but we found each other. Jessica, I love you. Will you marry me? Jessica took a deep breath and said, yes, I'll marry you. There was a pang-eyed fear in the pit of her stomach. She softened and thought, he's dead. I have nothing to worry about. 1 week later, Kyle was sitting on his back deck thinking about the upcoming wedding and moving Jessica in with him. He took a deep puff of his Cuban Montecristo No. 2 and exhaled the smoke as he sighed in contentment. The gun was placed to his temple and the trigger was pulled. The gun was put into his hand, the cigar put into the ashtray, and a note was left tucked under the heavy ash bin on the table. The price is paid in full. Jessica hung up the phone after talking with Detective Jordan, her face wet with tears after the emotional conversation. She went up to her bathroom and grabbed a bottle of sleeping pills. She hadn't needed one for a while, but always had them on hand. She walked out to her mailbox, placed an envelope in, and lifted the flag to let the mailman know there was outgoing mail. She laid on her bed and thought of her wedding to Brian, and what a perfect day it was. She thought of Ginny and how proud she was of her career. She thought of family vacations and trips to the park. She regretted ever meeting Greg and ruining her own life. Finally, she said a prayer that she would see Brian soon. She placed the note on her chest as she fell asleep for the last time. Her note read, "My price is paid in full." Ginny walked in with the mail and a bag of groceries. She set everything down, put her keys in the hook, and kicked her shoes off. Her husband, Blake, wouldn't be home until almost midnight since he worked second shift as a police officer, so she had the pleasure of a silent house to enjoy. She opened a bottle of California Roots Cabernet and poured a healthy glassful. Taking a drink, she walked over to the pile of mail and saw a letter. Holy shit. She cried out when she read the sender's name, Jessica. She tore it open and read her mother's last communication to her, falling into her chair. Tears fell from her eyes as she read what her mother's suicide truly meant. Wow, Mother. Wow, she said to the empty house. She picked up her cell phone and made a call. Jordan, Detective Jordan, this is Emma, Brian and Jessica's daughter. Hello, young lady. Sorry to hear about your mother's suicide. Thank you. At least hers saved you some investigating. Yes, Kyle, no, but hers? Yes. What can I do for you, Emma? I received a letter in the mail from my mother. It's a confession. What? He screamed into the phone. It's a confession for all of the suicides. Apparently she was insane. I can't believe this. Jesus Christ. Okay, come and meet me at my station as soon as you can, on my way. She took the first page and lit it on fire, put in her fireplace and made sure it burned completely. The letter read, My dearest Emma, I'm giving you this last gift of my penance, whether you believe it or not. I love you with all of my heart, and I'm sorry for all of the pain that I've caused you. It was not intentional in hurting you, and your father was the worst thing I've ever done. I knew it had to be you when Kyle was killed, and I accept my punishment. I'm sorry I caused you to punish me in this way, and I hope you can now live the rest of your life without the pain of my betrayal of you and your father. Destroy this page and give page 2 to the police. Page 2 is my confession for them. I take full responsibility and give you the gift of your freedom. It's all my fault, and I can't ever repair your lost years with your dead or your hurt. I've caused so much death, and it has to stop. Maybe this will make it up to you, and you can finally forgive me and be at peace. Please tell my future grandchildren stories of the good times and not of how I destroyed our lives. I pray that you and Blake have a wanting and happy marriage. Don't ever fall for it when someone tries to take you from him. I love you with all of my heart, Mom. P.S. Please see someone and get yourself the help that you desperately need on the second page. Dearest Emma, by the time you get this, I will already be dead by my own hand. I can't take the guilt any longer. I killed all of those men, my lovers. They all had to pay the price of taking me from your father. I was always his. Maybe now I can join him again. May God forgive me. I will always love you, and I'm sorry I ruined our lives. Until Greg, we truly had a perfect family. Mom. Emma was escorted to Detective Jordan's desk and sat down after exchanging greetings. After he read the letter, he said, Jesus, Emma, I apologize. Yeah, I just can't believe it. She must have really lost it years ago when I stopped talking to her after what she did to my dad. I can't believe she kept waiting just to kill them. God, I just don't get it. It kind of makes sense that it was her for a couple of the murders. Her alibi wasn't great. We just couldn't place her at the scene. And frankly, we didn't have a good enough case. I always felt it was your father or Greg's ex-wife, but we couldn't break their alibis either. Well, I'm glad it's all over. The murders, her pain, everything. Take care, detective. You too. Emma walked out of the police station with a mile-wide smile and shook her head. She stopped as she opened her car door, looked up to the sky and said, "Thanks, Mom. I hope you do find Daddy wherever you are." So what do you think about this story? Is it true that love and betrayal are always opposites? Or sometimes is revenge the only way for someone to achieve justice for themselves? In the end, after everything has calmed down, can the man in this story ever truly find peace after such immense hurt? Or will he forever be trapped in his past? And can the daughter he just discovered change everything, becoming the one reason for him to keep moving forward? This story isn't just about betrayal and revenge. It's about a journey to rediscover oneself, to rise above the pain life throws at us. It's also a reminder of the power of forgiveness. Even though it's difficult, it's the only thing that can heal the deepest wounds. If this story made you reflect and you want to continue following more intriguing, surprising, and meaningful stories, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel so you never miss a video in the future. Thank you for watching and sharing this story with us. Have a wonderful day, and we hope to see you in the next videos.